Now, there were some less happy memories later on in your FWA time. You started to be plagued by injury. And then, in fact, at a show against, you were supposed to be wrestling Doug Williams in Broxbourne in 2003 in the main event. And that match never happened. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I remember that because all week I wasn't feeling too great, and again, if you can imagine, I was heavily involved with steroid use and other drugs, sort of like painkillers, etc. Because my knees were really getting to a point where I could hardly walk. So I was just shoveling painkillers down my neck like there was no like there was no tomorrow. And I remember going to work that day previous because I had to go to work and I had to go home ill because I was not right. I didn't feel well. So I had a bit of a rest, and I thought, I'll do the show, see how I feel. I've got to the show, and I just really, really wasn't not good at all. And now again with the FWA crowd and what they expect, I really wanted to give them a good show, and I thought, okay, I'll take some Ephedrine, no worries, I feel all right there. And about 10 minutes after I took the Ephedrine, I started to get to a point where I started getting chest pains. I couldn't breathe. I was getting pains down on my left hand side, and I was almost I killed over, and they called the ambulance. I got carted off in the ambulance, and obviously put on a life support machine, sort of cardiac monitor. I was given some morphine just to calm me down because my pulse rate was going 90 to dozen, and they said I was very lucky because at that time I'd suffered a minor heart attack, and obviously I told them all the stuff that I'm on, and they said, what are you doing to yourself? You're trying to put yourself in an early grave, and I think really from that point that was a massive, massive reality check, knowing that, and that was the beginning of the end of my steroid use, because that was a massive, massive warning to me that I'm not infallible. I didn't think I was the Superman I was. So, I started easing off, for advice from the doctors as well to curtail the steroid use and all the painkiller use. And it was, it was a scary moment in my life, really scary.
So you eventually came back, you eventually sort of fought back to fitness. How did it feel to get back in the ring for the first time, knowing that you'd had such a health situation?
It took me a long way because again I was scheduled to do another show, but again I still wasn't quite well and I was still quite ill, and I got back. But getting back into the ring, I don't think it was ever really the same for me because I was more worried about my health at that time. Obviously not having the painkillers, my knees were absolutely just, I couldn't walk, and it was getting to a point that I always promised the fans that, when I gave them Phil Fleshbarker, I'd give them at 100%, and if I couldn't give them Fleshbarker at 100%, then I wouldn't give them at all, and I'd call it quits. And so, it was more, I was more worried about myself than the wrestling, and it had quite an adverse effect on my performances then.
You were suffering from a bad knee at the time as well.
Yeah,
right?
I was suffering. My knees were really, really bad. They were crumbling away, and literally at times I had to be carried into the change room. I'd get out and wrestle, and they were all right. When the adrenaline was flowing, but give it an hour later, then when I was driving home, and I had to pull up. I'd be crying. I'd literally cry my eyes out with the pain in my knees. Many times I had to stop and sleep over in the lay-by because my knees were just gone, and.
Were you still enjoying the actual experience of wrestling, or were you just doing it because it's all you knew?
I think I was doing it. I was enjoying the camaraderie, but I wasn't actually enjoying the wrestling itself because, again, there was the pain factor, and knowing that I couldn't perform to my optimum. I couldn't perform as well as I used to be. I was working. Don't forget, I was working at the time as well, but. It was a case of this is all I knew socially. This was my big part of my social life. All my friends that I grew up with had moved on, so most of my friends were within the wrestling. So socially, it's all I knew.
Of course, you're into your second marriage by this point as well, and I understand your second wife wasn't keen on you continuing wrestling for understandable reasons. You finally had to have surgery on your knees, and with your wife, not keen on you continuing to wrestle anyway, you were considering retirement. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, just slightly previously to before I got married as well. Around about that time, I was getting to sort of like the bitter end of of my time with the FWA, and I just couldn't walk. And so I got together with my wife, and she looked at it and she said, and don't forget, she had to deal with the pain that I was suffering with, day in, day out on a daily basis, knowing that I was crying, getting up, that I couldn't walk. It would take me half hour to 3/4 of an hour to get out of bed sometimes. That I couldn't do the things, that I couldn't go out with her because I was just in too much pain, and obviously you're going to become a bit ratty. So, I said to the FWA, and we decided that I was going to retire for a substantial amount of time to get the work done on my knees. And if it worked, then I was going to come back. It was always my ambition to come back.
Did you tell your wife that, or was...
No, I never did. I sort of said it, but she got into mind that once I retired for good. And obviously there was this thing: if my knees weren't working out as it should do, then I would have retired. So obviously I've had that done. I spoke to her, and like I said, when you've seen someone in pain, you don't want to see them in pain. So all she wanted to do, and she came from a big boxing family as well, so she knew, what the pressures were like. She knew the injuries that could be sustained. So, when I retired, and I had my big retirement ceremony, again with lights when Loki turned up and all this, and again that was really emotional. She thought that was the end of my career.
What did it feel? I was going to move on to that next. What did it feel to have that ceremony? I mean, it was an emotional night. Did you get a real sense of how well loved you were by the fans and the other wrestlers?
Yeah, I did actually. I mean, I always knew I was respected by him, but I never really knew how much I was loved by him and the other wrestlers. Again, wrestling is a bit of a self-conceited business. You only think about yourself. I had my best mate in there, Doug Williams, and he's always been, and he'll always will be my best mate. And I remember him crying, and it set me off, to be honest with you. And the love of the fans, that they appreciated what I've done over the years. It really brought it home to me. It's just one of those awesome experiences that I can't describe. And again, to have Loki come over and from America and pay tribute to me, and to me, we had that massive match with him, and I remember doing that because we both really, really went into each other. We hit each other, and we totally went full contact on each other.
This was back in 2002, right? Yeah.
That's right, yeah. I remember that match because, again, it was a shoot-style match, and, we both had reputations of being hard hitters, and I knew the crowd wouldn't accept anything less, so... we made a conscious decision that when we hit each other, it was going to be full contact. And, at time it was all right, but afterwards I regretted saying that because we were really battered. And obviously he'd done his shoulder in as well, Loki. And he'd done it in the middle of the match, and he was really, really... He didn't tell me that he'd separated his shoulder. So that's a testament to the man. But, he turned, like I say, he turned up to my retirement ceremony. And, and also when I retired, there was this real devastating loss for me as well, because it's something I'd known for 17 years, lost one marriage to, given my heart and soul, and there I was quitting,